If you were madly in love with someone and they left the toilet seat up, you wouldn't be upset. You would just put it down. There's something else that's going on that makes it so this becomes a trigger. It's easy to tell people surface level problems. You have to actually get beneath that. That's where the real vulnerability is. What does it mean to you? How does it make you feel not enough? How does it not make you feel loved? Because if you're getting everything that you needed in the relationship, all your needs were being met at an emotional level, surface level things wouldn't bother you.
Beyond the perfect we discover, through our flaws we complete each other. Better than perfect we stay, through every fault we find our way.
All right, welcome back to the Better Than Perfect podcast, where every week we share with you how two imperfect people helping each other grow equals one better than perfect relationship.
That's right.
Yeah. And today, we're going to be talking about the number one thing that can kill your relationship.
I wonder what people watching this thinks that it is.
Children.
What? I mean, a lot of people think also, that'll fix their relationship.
Yeah, it's number two, but.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. I mean, have kids. It's okay.
Have kids. It's okay.
Yeah, it's okay. We need the population. How would we have, how would the human species survive if people didn't?
I mean, I don't think it's going to. I think AI is going to terminator us at some point, but that's just my opinion.
But it's actually resentment. That is the number one.
The real one.
Yeah. Yeah. At least that's, what we think that it is. But I think that it's a really good.
It is. Yeah. Because I think it encompasses a lot of stuff, like a lot more than what people think. And even I was thinking about it, people say sometimes that communication is key, right? They'll say that that's like the important thing.
Right.
And I think that keeps you from having resentment. So that's why it's key. So I do think that resentment is the number one thing, because once that seeps in, it also paints a totally different picture of the situation than, the one that you had when you first got married or things didn't build up. We talked about it when we first started our podcast, like sweeping things under the rug.
Right.
And I don't think we did a whole episode on resentment exactly, but I know that we've talked about, sweeping things under the rug until it's just like this huge mound and you're going to trip over it eventually.
Exactly. Yeah.
But yeah, I do think that I can't think of another thing that would be the most damaging to a relationship.
Yeah. I mean, there's things that can damage a relationship, but this is the most common thing that ends up, right? Like, because we did the episode about the honeymoon phase and how it could never end. And basically the formula was to not have resentment.
Right.
So, the analogy I always like to use is that it's like tooth decay, right? Mm-hmm. It's like if you don't brush your teeth and go to the dentist, you have tartar that builds up and plaque. Mm-hmm. And over time that causes tooth decay. And, if you regularly clean it and, get rid of that tartar, get it scraped out of there, then your teeth don't decay. But it's the same thing with a relationship, is like that tartar of the relationship builds up. And from fights, from disagreements, from things that you want that you're not getting, and, things that didn't get resolved. And then over time, as that builds up, it becomes a decay. It ends up decaying the relationship. And so you have to have those regular cleanings, which is the talking it out and bringing up the topics, right? Because it's like, otherwise it festers.
Well, and I think people don't talk about a lot of the things that bother them because they're afraid of the situation that it's going to turn into. It's going to turn into an argument. It's going to turn into a disagreement. But what's worse for your relationship than getting into a disagreement or an argument with your partner is not doing that and harboring the resentment. And then it just builds and builds and builds.
Right.
And then you're so far into that, by the time you do actually talk about it, you're probably acting in ways that you don't even want to be acting.
Right. Yeah.
And then causing more damage. And then you can get to a point where it might not even be repairable. I think most things are repairable.
Yeah.
However, if you let a lot of resentment build up about a lot of things and now you hate this person essentially, which sounds crazy, but some people get to that point.
Exactly. Yeah.
Then you just kind of give up. You don't even want to fight for the relationship anymore. And instead of talking about it when you first started feeling resentment, and even though it's going to be an uncomfortable conversation, you would have cleaned all that out and it wouldn't have been swept under your rug. And you would not feel emotionally constipated or whatever you're feeling because you're still harboring your actual true feelings that you never expressed, or you expressed them, but you guys just argued and then you didn't want to deal with that. And so you're like, whatever, I'm not dealing with this. And then so you never actually resolved the problem.
It's just like, I mean, again, the dental, right? Yeah. Because when you have calculus that builds up on your teeth, it's because you have the soft plaque, right? Mm-hmm. And then that soft plaque hardens and becomes tartar, which can only now be scraped.
Right.
But if you brush your teeth, when you have that soft plaque, it'll come off. Right.
Unless you're me and they always got to scrape my freaking teeth, no matter what I do.
Right. But it's the same thing as it's when you have the issues, if you discuss them as they're coming up, they're easier to get resolved.
Right.
But when it's built up over time, then that's where all of a sudden, out of nowhere, there's an explosion and all of these hurt feelings come out in a wrong way because resentment has set in. And then it's harder to remove. It's harder to fix the relationship when you now hate your partner because you've been festering and thinking about the ways that they should get in a car accident or whatever. Because people do really start to get to that point where they're actually brewing on, like they're thinking their life
want
would be
their
better.
Partner to get in a car accident?
It happened. I mean, people get to the point where, think about it, people fall in love, right? They get married, they're in love, and then they have a divorce where they want to tear each other's hearts out and see each other dead on the road. Like, that's to that level where they hate each other's guts. So at that point, like, something's happened during that process that they've gotten to that extreme. And what I'm saying is that it's resentment, is because resentment built up over time turns into hate.
Okay. But here's the thing. Here's, I guess, my question, because yes, but also I feel like with cheating thing. So when a partner cheats, the woman resents him for doing that. And that's also part of it. Because I feel like
I think that can be the case for sure.
I'm concerned if most people have so much resentment where they wanted the other person to die. Like, that's extreme.
It's pretty common in divorce, I think.
I can see where someone's maybe been cheated on.
Yeah.
That they would say extreme things like that. Again, I don't think it's acceptable. I don't think it's okay.
Yeah.
But I guess that's my question, is like, is cheating like how you feel when you've been cheated on resentment? Is that more betrayal?
I mean, initially it's betrayal, right? But then it becomes resentment.
Right. Because you're like, you know, I spent all this time with this person and they did this to me or whatever. Like, you know, or sometimes they're like, why didn't I see this before? Or whatever. But
so maybe we should.
I can maybe see someone that's been cheated on, a woman being extreme like that. But if you just have straight up resentment over the years and it's turned into that, if you want your partner to die, please go talk to your partner about your problems and be vulnerable with them.
Yeah. Well, it like I said, it gets to the point where people have these horrible divorces, and that's where they're at that point.
But I think they just never talk to each other, right?
Yeah. Well, it's because it's like, I think what ends up happening, the progression of it, is that you have something that annoys you, that's like unresolved things. And then that resentment, because, okay, when you're in love, right? When you're idealistically in love and you meet someone new and you're like falling in love, you have an idealistic view of them. So all the quirks that they have, you're like, that's cute, right? It's like, oh, he leaves contacts on the
I still think that's cute.
Right,
and
well,
that's how I know I love you.
That's a good thing. If that changes,
changes,
let me know before it gets to the car crash, like burn in a car crash. So, no, but you have an idealistic view of the things, right? And then what happens is when something happens, your feelings are hurt and it doesn't get resolved.
Right.
Then you're like, oh, look, they make such weird noises when they chew their food. Like, look at her with her smug look on her face. Or like, you start to like find things.
Or make things up.
Right.
Yeah.
That now annoy you.
Mm-hmm.
And then those things just, you're in that zone of resentment.
They compound.
Exactly. And now everything this person does, and now everything, you're just finding ways. Now you're talking bad to your friends about the person. And then you're now building up this case against them where you're actually converting it into hatred.
Yeah.
And it compounds and it gets to a point where it's extreme. It's like, how do you actually hate this person? You hate the way they breathe. It's like you loved everything about them. And it's because that's what resentment does. That's why forgiving, we did a whole episode on forgiving, is such a huge, important thing that you can do as a human being for yourself. Not just in a romantic relationship, but just in life and other people. Because if you don't forgive, then you will build resentment.
Right.
And over time, it will turn into hatred and you'll become a grumpy, hating person.
Right. Well, and I think that you have to talk it out too until you feel like it's all on the table.
Right.
I would even say not until someone tells you what you want to hear. Right. But until you've spoken your truth and you've put it out there, because you can't control how the other person's going to react.
Right.
Like, say that, I don't know, like, okay, we'll use the contact thing. Say I'm like, hey, John, it really bothers me that you leave your contacts everywhere.
Right.
And like you're trying, but maybe you forget or something. And then that would just probably set me off if I was in that state. However, if I'm like, told you how I feel, and I can at least acknowledge that you're trying.
Right.
And if it kept happening, I would have another conversation with you.
Right.
But I think the thing is that you have to express it and then allow that person to either like do the improved version of that or not. And then kind of go from there rather than basing your resentment on if you get the proper response or not.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Like, obviously, your partner should care about you and want to help you, or maybe there's a reason the contacts, maybe the dog is taking the contacts and you know what I mean? Like, you don't know what's going on. This sounds ridiculous, but you have to be open.
Right.
And a lot of people who have a lot of resentment aren't open. They're just like, I don't like you. Like, you're bothering me. You're annoying me, like you said. Or they're like, why do you keep doing this?
Right.
Like, that is defensive attack behavior.
Right.
And to actually get rid of the resentment, and you have to be vulnerable. You have to not base how you feel on the other person. Granted, if you're in a relationship, you should feel like your partner cares and is trying. But I don't think you should ever even expect it to immediately change. I think you know deep down whether your partner cares and they're making an actual effort.
Right.
Versus they're just kind of blowing you off and they're just telling you what you want to hear and they just keep doing the same thing.
And even in that case, like if you take the contacts case, it would never actually be about the contacts, right?
Right.
So if you're like, hey, you're leaving your contacts on the floor, whatever. And then I'm like, okay, I'll try to do better. And then it happened. And then you got upset. It wouldn't have even been about the contacts.
Right. You took my thought from my brain. People most of the time just want to feel like you care about them.
Right. Exactly. And even when you brought it up, even if you brought it up the first time, it still would have been about the contacts then.
Right.
It would have been something else. This context
felt like you didn't care.
Yeah. It represents.
You just left them somewhere.
Yeah.
And so, that's what was going through my mind too, is that that's why you have to just speak your truth and be vulnerable.
Right.
I'm not saying speak to people in a harsh way or violently, being verbally violent.
Right.
That's not the way to get what you want either.
Right.
Like, you have to be vulnerable. You have to be open. And you probably just want somebody to feel like they care about you.
Right.
Because like you said, it's normally not the thing that people think they're resenting their partner for.
Exactly.
It's normally that they don't feel cared about or loved or whatever it is. So that's why being vulnerable when you express these things, if you're emotionally aware enough, you should be able to be like, hey, the contact things bother me because I feel like you don't care.
Right.
I feel like you're, whatever. But maybe you're not there yet. But if you're like, hey, this bothers me, like whatever, and you still try to explain it in a vulnerable way, not an attacking way,
right,
your partner is way more likely to respond to you back in a vulnerable and caring way. I mean, you got married or you're in a relationship for a reason. Your partner should care about you and you should care about your partner.
right.
So even when you allow the resentment to build up where you're treating your partner poorly, you're not caring about them.
Exactly.
Just like you feel like they're not caring about you. And a lot of people do the tit for tat thing. And honestly, the tit for tat thing is not good.
No.
It's really not, because you have to realize that you have to do things based on who you are, not on how people treat you.
Right, exactly.
Because you'll always also feel like you don't even really know who you are if other people's actions dictate what you do. Now, I'm not saying that you can't, change certain behavior. Maybe you don't do as much, or you don't worry about the contacts. You allow him to figure it out, whatever. I'm not saying you can't change certain things like that, but you should never allow somebody, if they're talking poorly to you, to be like, well, I'm going to talk poorly to them.
Exactly.
The better thing is to be like, I'm not going to continue this conversation. Have a boundary, be kind and have a boundary. And so even though it's scary to even get into a conversation, because a lot of people have this resentment where they hate each other, right?
Right.
But they're still afraid to actually talk to each other.
Right. And to really talk. And that's the thing.
Right.
It's because you have to dig below the issue, because when we're talking about doing the deep cleaning, because we're like, oh, well, I do talk or whatever, I brought up the subject. It's like, you might not even realize what it is for you, because if you're like, I keep on telling him about the contacts again, then it's like, well, yeah, but there's something deeper than that. Why did it even annoy you in the first place? If you were madly in love with someone and they left the toilet seat up, you wouldn't be upset. You would just think that's silly. Like, you would just put it down.
You fell in the toilet.
Right. Right. But you would just put it down. You know what I'm saying? You wouldn't be upset, right? It's like, there's something else that's going on that makes it so this becomes a trigger. And you have to actually get beneath that, which that's where the real vulnerability is, because it's easy to tell people surface level problems and say, I want you to do this, or you're upsetting me because you're doing this. But that's not the real vulnerable heart level problem.
Right.
It's like, what is that doing to you? What does it mean to you? How does it make you feel not enough? How does it not make you feel loved? How are these things happening that you're not getting in the relationship? Because if you're getting everything that you needed in the relationship, all your needs were being met at an emotional level, then surface level things wouldn't bother you. Like, you feel fine, like taking care of them, like they leave something on the floor, picking it up, there's something that's going on always underneath. And that's what you have to dig down and figure out. And and it goes both ways, because when you're presenting a problem, you have to think about, okay, well, what is this? How can I actually vulnerably present what's actually happening? Right. And then also, when you're on the other side of it and you're getting some kind of thing that might seem ridiculous to you, it's like, well, why is this bothering my partner so much? It's because what is underneath that? It's not what they're saying. And if you can figure out, even you can ask some questions. We'll do some sales questions. It's like, so when I leave the contacts on the floor, what does that do to you? Like, how do you feel about that? Like, what happens when you see that?
Well, you don't even have to do this little thing here, because when you said the thing about the toilet seat, I agree with you. Yeah. I think that if you did it a few times, it would not be a big deal. Right. But I think even I would feel like you didn't care about me also using the bathroom if you did that consistently. Right. And that doesn't even happen. But I'm just thinking about it, like when you said that, it's like, it does kind of feel, I had this feeling of like, it does feel kind of inconsiderate if it's every single time. Sure. You know what I mean? Because like, it'd be different if I could use the bathroom in that state. I mean,
you can. It's just hard to.
No, I'm not going to. And please don't make me attempt. But I think that's the thing, right? Yeah. It's like, I cannot use the toilet like this. Right. So it does feel inconsiderate. You know what I mean? Like if it constantly happened. Now, if it happened every once in a while. But I mean, like, even I had that reaction. You don't even do this thing.
Right.
But it's like, even thinking about if like you did that constantly.
And then
I'm telling you right now that I would feel like you didn't, you weren't being considerate of me. And I would feel like you didn't care about how you're leaving things that I also use.
And then you tell me about it.
Right.
And then I still don't do it. And now it's compound. Now, how do you feel? Now you feel like
now I feel like you don't, it wasn't even just the toilet. You just really don't care about me.
Right. Yeah. Now I'm ignoring the words that you're saying. Like,
you're not even listening.
I don't actually care about things that you're
and
right. So then it becomes another issue compounded on top of that. Whereas like, what is the core issue? Right. Because it's like, if you get to the core issue and it's really like with the toilet seat, in that case, it would be something like, it feels like you're not considering me. Like I must not be the number one in your life if your thoughts aren't enough about me to think when you're doing something, like, how can I?
Right. And you're telling me I'm number one, but it's like the toilet says otherwise.
I'm not on your mind.
Sounds ridiculous.
Right.
But this is real life. Like these are the things that bother people. And like, maybe it's more so women with some of these things, but men have the same sort of things where they don't feel considered or they don't feel desired or they don't feel whatever's important to them. And it might seem little to a woman. This toilet seat thing might sound stupid to men, but they have things that a woman would be like, oh, that sounds ridiculous. But it doesn't matter. Like you should care.
Right. And if you talk about it, then you can get to the point because because in your mind, you know, you might be like, oh, he doesn't put the toilet seat down because he doesn't consider me. But it might be that he's just forgetful or like just an idiot, right? And so if you have the conversation, then you can determine which one it is. And if it's like, if the reassurance is there to say, oh, wow, I really don't mean to do that. I no way want to do that. Like I literally just forget, but I will now make it a point to not forget that. Then that sort solves the problem at the deeper issue. It actually cleans the plaque off because the issue wasn't the toilet seat. It was the deeper thing of like, why is this like, and the assumption about why that behavior was happening, which made you feel insecure. It made you feel not enough because everything always comes down to one of those things that we feel insecure. We don't feel enough. And it's like, this is just, you know, how we're seeing this in the world. And then when you get that reassurance, oh no, you are enough. Like you know, then it resolves the issues, but it has to be resolved at that deep level. Nothing is ever surface level.
Yeah. And when you have very intimate relationships, like when you're married, when you're in a relationship and you live together and all those things, like little things like that are going to pop up more and mean more than they probably did when you guys lived on your own. You didn't have to worry about toilet seats and things like that. You know what I mean? So it's normal for little things like that to pop up and you still have to talk about them. Like no matter how minuscule it seems, if it's bothered you to the point where you're bordering on resentment, you should talk about it immediately.
Exactly. And that's the key. Is talking about
like, don't be like, oh, this toilet seat thing really annoys me, but like, am I really going to start a fight over a toilet seat? Like now you've just convinced yourself out of actually solving your own problem because you're like, this is dumb. And like and the guy might be like, it's dumb. But if he's like, this is dumb, then you also now know that you feel very much unimportant or whatever those deep-seated things are.
You can start the conversation with, this is dumb, but I feel this way. Like, I can't help that I feel this way. I know it's dumb. I know it's not a big deal. But this is where I think it's coming from. Like, I'm not blaming you for anything. I'm not saying you're doing anything intentionally, but I just have to let you know how I feel because I don't want it to be something that I hold against you or that I, you know, that like I keep on thinking about in my mind. Can you help me with this? He still
might not understand.
No.
So send him to John. If he doesn't.
And you're not always, you can't, that's the thing is like, you have to be brave in your vulnerability. Right? Because you're not always going to get the reaction that you want. Because if you're only going to get a positive response, it wouldn't take courage to be vulnerable. Right? And so you have to, it has to be enough that you've done the right thing, that you've put yourself out there. And that actually, like we talked about before, it makes you invulnerable. In other episodes, we talked about vulnerability makes you invulnerable.
Right.
Because when you're really, really willing to put it all out there and you don't have an expectation of how the other person's going to respond or the outcome, then there's nothing that's going to harm you in that. And so you can really put that out there. But that's what, I think a lot of people don't do it because they're like, just like you said, oh, am I really going to start a fight over this thing? It's like, you start a fight now, potentially, which you don't have to fight. You don't have to engage in a fight, but potentially start a fight now in order to save a relationship in the long term.
In order to save the destruction of your relationship.
Because it will destroy, because that one little thing that's bothering you will grow. The root of bitterness, like that bitterness plant will grow into, now this other thing annoys you and this other thing and this other thing. And it's like all these things will build up to the point where it's like fiery car crash.
Yeah. Well, and if you actually talk about it, like we'll continue to use the toilet seat thing, but if you actually talk about that, and your husband or whatever's like, I'm really sorry, I just like forget, but I'm going to try. And you believe him. And like I said, he's like, maybe he still does it sometimes, but he puts it down more often now.
Right.
That will also help you have a more secure relationship, and you might not feel attached to the toilet seat anymore.
Right, exactly.
You know what I mean? You might not see the toilet seat up and be like, oh, he doesn't care about me.
Right.
If anything, you'll be like, oh, I see he's trying. He forgot this time, and just put it down.
Right.
And like we said in the beginning, that if it's ever happening every so often, but you feel like your partner really cares and he's really, listen to you and his action, like he's doing it more where he's putting it down.
Yeah, he's just got dementia.
It's not going to bother you as much. You know what I mean? So it will also help. Yeah. I think people are afraid it's going to mess up their relationship to bring up things that bother them, but it actually gives them a more secure relationship.
And it becomes a real relationship because if you're building the relationship on a weak foundation, a false foundation that is easily can crumble because it's not how you really feel, it's not the real issues, then you're creating a structure on something that has a weak foundation. And so when you're talking about the things that actually are mean things to you or meaningful to you, then it's real. It's real talk. It's this is how I feel. This is what upsets me. This is how I feel insecure. These are my actual vulnerabilities, which it always comes down to vulnerabilities, right? That's what it is. It's like this, like you're bearing yourself bare before your partner and you're both doing this and people don't like it. Normally when you say to someone, this is how you've hurt me.
Right. They're going to defend themselves.
Their response is to run away or to beat you.
Yeah. Which is horrible if you say it like that. You know what I mean?
Because that's our human response.
Yeah.
But you have
fight or flight.
You have to walk through that and also empathize with them with their human response, knowing that you have that exact same human response and realize that that's why you can't have the expectation on it. It's like you have the vulnerability. They react negatively to it. You react to their negative reaction with compassion and understanding and continuing to be vulnerable, that now they feel safe. Like, it's like, because what happens is when you tell someone how they've hurt you to the other person, it feels like an attack. It feels like an attack on their character. It feels like you're cornering them, right? It feels like that. But when you are vulnerable and tell someone how they hurt you, and then they react like they do, and then you continue to make it still safe for them to be like, I understand that you're like, you don't like, this is uncomfortable for you, but this is still the truth. And I'm not going to get upset at you just because you have a negative reaction to this. This is still the truth.
I guess it depends on how much.
It depends on how much.
You should have a boundary if someone's like yelling at you.
For sure.
And also you do run the risk of steamrolling.
Right.
I don't think that's okay. I think like if you come to somebody vulnerable and they're like, you hurt me for saying this thing, that's steamrolling.
Right.
And so I agree with you that you can still be compassionate and be like, hey, I understand, like, it's hard to hear things like this, but I love you.
Exactly.
I'm not saying I don't want to be with you.
Right.
But if they continue down that path and then try to just be like, no, you hurt me, and then now it goes that way, then you should probably have a boundary and be like, okay, we need to talk about this at another time.
Right.
When you can talk more calmly.
Exactly.
But like you can still have boundaries. And like you said, you can still empathize. And honestly, people in relationships should reflect on the fact that they've come to their partner and told their partner that they've been hurt by them before.
Right.
And vice versa.
Right.
So you know that you've also hurt your partner. So if you just start from a vulnerable place in general and not allow someone being vulnerable and telling you things to hit your ego, especially if you're in a relationship, like you chose to spend the rest of your life together.
Right.
And if you meant that commitment, which everybody who makes it should,
right,
then it should be safe to talk about even
exactly
hurting each other. And it's not easy. We've been in situations where we've hurt each other and we've got defensive, and
Sure.
but now we're in a totally different place. Knock on wood. We're not going to come back with any more things, but no, I think we've learned this, and me especially. Like, I'm coming here really talking about all this and being vulnerable because I was the opposite of this, right? Like, and I took everything personally, and it was really hard to hear how I've hurt you. And then I like beat myself up for hurting you.
Right.
But then I also beat you up for making me feel bad, like the shame. And it just did absolutely nothing except made us talk for 8 hours.
But also,
you've done the same thing too, but it's like, and like, that's the human part of it, right? But it's like, when you really care about each other, like we both do, we both also have learned to care about each other in order to respond better to each other.
But was it helpful to you when you reacted in a negative way to my sharing the hurt? But
your mind thinks it is.
Well, no, but was it helpful to you when I started holding space for you, even when you're reacting in a negative way, to understand why you're reacting that way and not to think you're a bad person for reacting that way? You see what I'm saying? That helps you to now to feel safe enough to actually not react that way in the future. So that's what I'm saying is, obviously there's limits to it. Like you said, you have to have boundaries.
Yeah.
But one of the things that clicked for me also was like, okay, if I'm sharing something with you that is vulnerable, how I'm hurt, and you're reacting with the beat or run away reaction, instead of me getting more upset about that, if I can, what clicked for me was start being like, oh, I get what's happening here. Like, it's okay. I understand this response. Like, it's not okay to continue to do it, but I'm not more upset by this. Like, this is a normal response.
Which that has helped. But I think honestly, the thing that helped the most for me was that when you said something about me, I had to detach from the fact that I thought that meant you didn't want to be with me.
Right.
I thought that meant that if you were telling me that I hurt you, you didn't want to be with me anymore.
Right.
And that you were just starting off the conversation with how I hurt you. And then the end was going to be, we're not doing this anymore. Even if it was something minuscule, that's where my head went. And so I would be like, no, I got to fight, like I didn't do that, or like whatever. But when I got rid of that, where I was like, he's hurt me and I've hurt him and we're still together. This doesn't have to mean when he's hurt, he's not going to want to be with me. And I think that was the biggest thing. And I think maybe that's a big thing for a lot of people. So hopefully also anyone listening to this, if they feel like they struggle with what I was talking about, detaching from that, like, your relationship. I know it would take a lot. I don't even know what kind of craziness it would take for you and I to not be together.
Right. Yeah.
And so if I can not like think of the worst case scenario when you're just coming to me about something, then it will even more so prevent that from ever happening, if that makes sense.
If you get caught stealing and the price for stealing is the death penalty, you're going to lie 100% of the time when they ask you, did you steal?
Right.
Like, that's what's going to happen. If you feel like it's the death penalty, then you're going to lie. You're going to defend yourself. You're going to pretend, you know what I'm saying?
Like, it's the worst thing that could possibly happen to you. Yeah, you're not going to want to get close to that.
It has to be like, yes, in your mind, you have to be like, okay, it's not the death penalty. But also your partner also has to be like, look, it's not that, like, I'm letting you know this. But I'm not using this to beat you up. Because if it's like, okay,
let's fix this. I'm telling you this so we can fix it, not to punish you or threaten to leave you.
It's like, now you admitted you did wrong. Now I changed the way I feel about you. That's see, that's the thing. I mean,
some people's brains do that mental gymnastics. Mine's
but that's why it's helpful if you're dealing with someone who's struggling with that, which we all do at times, is to have a little more patience for their reaction, because they probably feel like it's the death penalty and they just got caught stealing, and you just told them I have videotape evidence of you stealing. Right. And so if you understand that, then you have to like back them off and be like, but it doesn't matter. Like, I'm not even upset that, like, I'm not even holding it against you that you did this, that I'm letting you know that I'm hurt, but I'm only letting you know so that we can resolve it, not because I want to hold this against you, or that if you admit it, that I'm going to be like, oh, see, you're such a bad person.
Right.
And then that makes it easier for them to be like, oh, okay, like, let's resolve this thing.
Yeah, no. And I think some people might be so far in resentment, though, where it might get a little more messy, and some people might be like, see, I told you, or whatever, if you've gotten down that road.
Right.
But once you clean out all the stuff from under your rug, you can get to the point like we're talking about, where even if something little comes up, you immediately talk about it. And so you're always got a nice flat rug. There's never a lump under there.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's always flat.
And you get understanding. The more that you go through these exercises, even though it might feel like, oh, I'm not going to make a big deal of this little thing and even talk about it.
Which I still do that sometimes.
Well, and we had kind of an instance the other night where, with our daughter, like, there, you had some feelings about some of the things that were said in the car and how things, and I was like, just tell me how it is, right? You know what I mean? And you told me. And
but I didn't want also you to be offended. Like, I didn't trust that's where it was really like complicated, because I didn't want you to be offended by my feelings or like my opinions.
Exactly.
And so it was like, I was like, no, I probably shouldn't.
In the past, that would have caused a big blow up, because I would have been offended by you, like, judging my parenting, and you would have been upset because you can't express how you're feeling without being attacked. That would have been the past. But we both, I think, have come to a point where we both understand each other well enough that when you're saying that, I know that you're not criticizing my parenting. It's just, you're just expressing how you feel about things and want to give me your perspective.
Yeah.
And then I'm able to listen to you without, and now you're able to feel safe enough to express those things and handle that. So
we still even do it. I do it.
but we handle it, but you know what I'm saying? Like, I
can't get that it's a slippery slope, and it's like you said, even that I was like, this isn't a big deal. It's just my opinion. Like, he's the one that made the decision. I don't want to offend him by what he said. But if he knew this, maybe he would understand my perspective.
But you had enough understanding about me from our previous discussions to open up. Like, I knew that something was bothering you, so I knew to probe for it. And then you opened up the conversation about what was bothering you with, I don't want to come across as I'm criticizing you, or I forget exactly what you said, but you knew enough about me to open up with that, which made it a lot easier, and that only came from us having these conversations, right? And so, and then I knew enough about you that I know you don't mean harm, that you're not trying to judge me, that like, I already know it even before you say it, that I could listen to it, and hear it, and we could have a discussion about it instead of a fight about it.
I guess this is our end segment in the middle.
But I think that that's the key, is that like, and it's happened a lot of times. I mean, I recognize that a lot of times where there'll be something that would have been the spark of an argument, but it's like, you understand me and I understand you enough that you immediately like shift gears, or I'll shift gears, because we're both have understanding of each other's intentions now, whereas before we didn't have an understanding of each other's intentions and we assumed the worst, right? But now it's like, I forget what happened, like just little things happen, and we'll like, you'll say something maybe in a way that I might perceive as rude, but then I'll know how to approach how to say that, and then or you'll even just back it off, and or the same thing, like I'll say something to you, and you'll respond in a way that prevents it from going to the nuclear.
I think that goes back to like, even if accidents still happen and the thing that you're resentful of still happens, you can tell if your partner cares or not, like you said. And we've made little adjustments because we do care about each other. And you can tell that we do, because we do try to be the best for each other. Are we always perfect? No, obviously not. We still do the same things. I'm still making mistakes. But I know that you care about me.
Yeah.
And if I'm hurt by something because I feel like you don't care about me, I can talk to you and then we can figure it out. But I know that you do care about me because of even how our interactions, like you just said, have changed. Yeah. And so that's why people, especially if you have a lot of resentment, I mean, it's going to be really hard because you're going to have a lot of stuff to talk about.
Yeah.
It's not impossible, but if you're pretty far down the resentment lane, you got a lot to talk about.
Yeah.
And you got to be vulnerable and you got to talk about it all.
Yeah.
Not
and
in
it might
one
take
sitting.
you a long time.
Yeah. Not in one sitting.
To dig out all that stuff.
You got to talk about it all. And you have to figure out,
right,
you know, where this came from. You guys started, like you said, in the honeymoon phase.
Right.
Everyone started out where they really loved each other, or they wouldn't have gotten married, like if you're married, or they wouldn't be together for a long time. You know what I mean? Yeah. So you have to figure out where along the way you guys have gone astray from that, because even though, yes, that is like the ideal version and you don't really know the person 100%, maybe you still do.
Right.
You still knew them enough to marry them or to be with them for 3 years. Like right. That's a big deal. So where along the way, what happened? What feelings have you held on to and allowed to fester inside of you that has gotten you away from here?
Oh, yeah.
And then you have to talk about all those things. And even if they're stupid, like you said, you could be like, this might sound stupid, but when you drove your bicycle way ahead of me and left me behind, I felt like you didn't care about me.
Right.
And he might be like, I do care. I'm just going fast. Like he might not really understand.
Yeah.
But if you're vulnerable and you're like, I understand that maybe you just wanted to go fast. I understand that, but it made me feel this way.
It can even be little stupid things like that build up in your head.
It probably is.
Like sometimes it's like, you could be something stupid like, well, when I sat on the couch, you didn't put your arm around me or something. Yeah. And it's like, and then now you're counting it every time.
Right.
And you're like, oh, look, see it happen again.
Yeah.
Look, it must be an intentional thing. And it's like, it was just an oversight.
Right. Yeah.
But you could have addressed it.
Right.
And instead now you've built up this entire narrative, this story in your head about why this is happening. And like, look, you're doing it again on purpose. And it's like, now you've gotten so far into this spot when you could have just been like, okay, this is a silly thing. It literally just was in your head.
Right.
But for your own insecurity made you like come up with a story, but didn't just talk about the story and just like, this is how I felt. And then
this is what my brain told me was happening.
Yeah. And it's so funny though, because it is such a destroyer of relationship, because even like when we were researching for this episode to like figure out what episode we should record a podcast on, you were reading a Reddit thread and the lady was talking about, their sex life with the guy that she was going to marry, that they've been in a relationship for a long time, and how he wasn't putting in the effort, like learning and you, that whole story reeked of resentment.
Right.
That had built, she wasn't even going to marry him.
Yeah.
Right. Because and she said their relationship was wonderful. Right. Like perfect relationship, great guy, all these positive attributes. She admires him, respects him. But one little aspect, right, that she did try to talk to him about it, but probably not, she tried to talk to him at the mechanical issue.
Right.
But not how it makes her feel issue. Right. She didn't go deep enough. That was probably really the problem, because
that's true.
We didn't get the whole story. It was long enough, but she talked about, like, she told him, gave him videos and techniques and stuff like that, and it doesn't seem like he's applying it or really trying. But that's the surface, and that's what most people have discussions about, and that's why it doesn't resolve. Yeah. The real resentment was coming from the fact that he wasn't doing those things. What did that mean to her? What did it say about how he values her as a person?
Right. Well, she said she didn't feel desired and something else because, like you said, but she probably didn't say those things to him. Right. Like you said, she probably didn't say, hey, this makes me feel not desirable. Like you're not really into it or whatever, because she seemed like the intimacy part of their relationship was very not good.
Because I'll have coaching clients that will talk to me about their wife or their girlfriend or whatever, and the things that are, and I'm like, don't tell me, tell her.
Right. Yeah.
It's like, I get it and it makes sense, but this is the problem is that you're not expressing this, and why, and guys more so. I don't know. I feel like, because I coach guys, maybe I feel like that is that guys they want to be peacemakers.
Yeah.
So they just want peace. You ask a guy what he wants. He says, I want peace, right? And it's like, you can have peace, but the price of peace is like the long-term death of the relationship. Like you have to have war sometimes
You
in order to
don't
have
get
peace. Yeah.
When you avoid things that you think are going to take the peace away, you just make it more chaotic, actually.
Because he's like, if I talk about this, if I bring this up or bring how I feel about this, she's going to react this way and be upset or whatever. And it's just going to ruin the night or ruin and it's like, yeah, but let it be ruined.
Right.
But even when you don't have to engage in a fight. You can bring up the things that are vulnerable to you. And sometimes, look, you bring up something that's in a vulnerable way. Your partner, because they feel attacked, because they hurt you, responds negatively. They run away or they attack you. And then you just let it sit.
Yeah.
And then a day later, they really think about it because you didn't engage back and now justify their actions.
Right.
Then they're like, oh, then they start to feel guilty. Then they apologize. Then they actually are open to listen because they got to get their initial reaction out.
Right.
And that's sometimes how it has to go. But if you're just afraid of that initial reaction and you're like, oh, I can't talk to them, I can't, then you're gonna build the resentment because there's no other, there has to be an avenue. And talking to your friends and stuff, that's also bad.
Right.
Like you can talk and ask for advice, but you have to resolve it with your partner.
You have to talk about the actual thing. You can't just talk about the thing to other people and then be like, oh, I'm better now, because you're not.
Yeah. Yeah. You've taken the pressure cooker and you've released some steam from it, but it's still under pressure.
Yeah.
Like that, it's made it so that it's not going to explode right now, but you haven't resolved the thing that there's heat that's heating up the liquid.
Yeah.
Like you got to turn off the heat at the source. You can't just relieve the pressure every once in a while.
Well, and also it kind of goes back to what I said in the beginning, that you shouldn't even expect much from your partner when you're bringing things up that bother you. You should just be vulnerable, and that should be enough for you.
Right.
Like if you did the right thing, you came to them vulnerably and you didn't attack them, you didn't treat them poorly, you weren't like threatening them or whatever. You did the right thing and they're not responding well. Like you said, don't interact with them. Be like, we can talk about this when you can, talk to me in a respectful way.
Right.
And that shouldn't cause a problem because you should know that you did the right thing.
Right.
And right now, your partner's not able to meet you at the same place, which you deserve.
Right.
When you're coming from, if you have the extra willpower to be able to try to bring them to where you are, you can try.
Right.
But if you don't, if you feel like you're going to get sucked in and you're going to yell and, like you said, stoop down to the same level and then you're fighting fire with fire,
then don't engage.
Yeah. But know that you were vulnerable.
Right.
You still even empathize with them or was like, I love you. I'm not trying to hurt you by telling you this.
Right.
I'm trying to resolve this. And they still can't act right. Then you need to let them have a moment and have your boundary and be like, we can talk when you can talk respectfully.
Exactly.
And know that you did the right thing. Like you have to that's why it still has to come from you being confident in yourself.
Right.
And if you have a lot of resentment, that's going to be really hard.
Right.
Like if you're really far down the line, it's going to be really hard to be vulnerable and not yell and not be like, it's all your fault.
Right.
And all the things that are just going to get you into an actual attack.
Well, and it's how you present it, right? Because also the big thing to understand is that no one ever hurts you. You are only capable of hurting yourself. You're responsible for your own feelings. And so it doesn't mean that people can't do things that are not good or that are not considerate. But when you present it, if you take ownership of your own feelings and realize that you hurt yourself, whatever they did, your interpretation of it is what hurt you, not what they did, your interpretation. And that might sound ridiculous, but it means that when you come to them, you don't say, you did this to me and you hurt me.
Right.
You don't even say you hurt me. You say, when you did this, I felt like this and that hurt, which is different. It doesn't make them the enemy, and it makes you responsible for your own feelings.
That's true.
You can say because it's a different interpret, because they might feel like their action they would not have interpreted that in a way that caused them to be hurt.
Right.
Right. Because if you've ever been in the situation, well, if I did this to you, what would you think? And they're like, I would be okay with that. And then now you're like,
some of that's also not true as well when people say that.
Yeah, some of it's not true, but if but that's disputable, right?
That's
Whether
true.
this action causes hurt, and they can argue that case.
Mhm.
But if you say this happened and I felt hurt, like this is what happened.
Yeah, I
and
felt like
when
you
this
didn't
happened,
care and that hurt.
and and you can't argue that. You can't say no, you didn't. No, that's like this is what happened, and you own your reaction to it. It seems like a subtle difference, but it's a huge difference because now you're not accusing the other person. Because also what happens is that most of the time we don't intentionally hurt someone, right? But when we tell someone you hurt me, it sounds like intentional.
Yeah.
Right. But if we think, okay, they're not intentionally hurting me, then we say, okay, well, you did this or you said this thing, and then I felt this way and that hurt me. Now it doesn't seem intentional. Now it seems like this
like
is
their interpretation and
exactly. Yeah. So I think that's a big important part of it, because when you just unload on someone, unless they're a saint, unless they're a Buddhist monk, they're going to probably have a reaction to that and feel attacked by you.
Yeah. But everybody should be working on trying to get to a place, though, where they can respond.
Yeah.
Not reactive. And it is possible, because I was very reactive. And now sometimes even I'm surprised how unreactive I can be in situations that even boil some of the reactivity in me, and I still don't let that spill out. But that is also things that people can work on as well, too. And it is important. And both people should work on it. You can't control your partner, but you can also lead by example.
Right.
And I will tell you, you will have a way more peaceful life if you can both learn to be not as reactive and use the things that we're telling you, because we've not used them and we've been there and talked for 8 hours and still sometimes felt like we haven't actually finished the problem. And then where we're at now, knock on wood, is totally different.
And that can help you to be non-reactive too, is to take that perspective when someone is telling you how you've hurt them, is to know that they've actually hurt themselves. Right. And they're like, because then you can realize it's not actually you, it's something within that, because they might have different triggers or different traumas in their past, and something that's totally innocent on your part might cause that reaction. And so don't take the responsibility of thinking that you've hurt them. Like, take responsibility for your actions. But if they're telling you that you've hurt them, it might be just internal to them, and you should just empathize with it. Yeah. It doesn't mean that you're taking responsibility that you did something bad.
Right. But you should care about your partner. Of course. You should care that your partner's hurt and try to focus on that rather than focus on you being the one that hurt them. Right. Focus on that they're hurt and not wanting them to be hurt, because you care about them and you love them and you want to have a happy, peaceful life. So we're going to work through whatever's going on. You're hurt until you feel better, so we can get back to the peaceful state that we were in before.
Now, there's one other thing I want to talk about on this.
Is it the same one that I
think so,
about?
Probably. Which is the idea of like how fixing a relationship can result in resentment.
That is. Well, I was going to say that maybe you haven't felt resentment, but then all of a sudden a shift happens in your relationship and now you do feel resentment.
Right. So a lot of times what happens too is that you're in a fighting phase and the two of you are just attacking each other, or you're having a lot of difficulties, whatever. And then when things quiet down, because you're actually starting to resolve issues, then one person or both now feels a massive amount of resentment when things should be getting better, because now you're actually talking about it, or actually even when the person changes. So let's say that someone is engaging in harmful behavior. They're doing something really harmful to the other partner, and that partner is trying to get them to understand and trying to get them to change. And then they actually do start to change. They actually do start to heal. They actually stop doing that harmful behavior. Now that other partner is even more upset at them. And because now the resentment really starts to come out. Because
why do you think that is?
The reason why that happens is because when you're being hurt, our natural reaction is to seek validation. So if someone is emotionally or physically abusing us, we just want it to stop. So all of our energy is put into like trying to be better or to try to get them to stop. And then we're kind of burying the hurt because we're ignoring that. Because the more immediate need is to put out the fire and to get them to stop behaving this way, to stop the new infliction of damage. So when they actually stop doing it, we're no longer in that flight or fight mode. And now we're sitting with the actual hurt that we've been ignoring for such a long time, all that toll of the damage. And then now we have to deal with it. And a lot of times that now we've got this built up resentment because we were letting our needs go unmet for such a long time because we were trying to tend to their needs, are trying to stop ourselves from being abused, that now we have to sit with what actually, and now all this is coming up for us. And we're trying to deal with all that stuff.
Like now you can actually process your feelings about it because before you couldn't because you're focused on other things.
Exactly. So that's a big...
Sounds like though that you got to talk about that stuff, right? Like even though you're talking and resolving some things, there's still more to be talked about.
Well, and then what happens is I think also in that case, the person that was being subjected to the harm and now the other person stopped harming them. They're holding on to this hurt and they're afraid to bring it up. Why?
To cause more problems, to get back in that fighting.
Because they finally stopped, that person finally stopped sticking them with the stick.
Yeah.
And now if they're like, hey, when you stuck me with the stick 50 times, that kind of hurt. Yeah. Now they're like, oh, well, then they're going to start sticking me with the stick again. And so what happens is they're trying to avoid conflict. They don't want to get back in that situation. So then they build up resentment and then their relationship drops off from the other end when you thought it was going to drop off from the one end.
Right.
If that makes sense.
No, it does. But you do still have to talk it out, even if you're afraid for all of that to happen again. And if that does happen again, and it's at a point where, it's unacceptable, then that's a choice that you have to make. Because that's different. Abuse is different. Or whatever, like if it's to that extreme, then what's the best decision for you to make.
Right.
Because you're in that situation. But in order to fully resolve it, all the resentment has to be gone.
Exactly.
And two, I get it that when you don't feel like you had time to process your own emotions, that now that things have calmed down, you're doing that. But like you said, I think also though, the more you hold on to that hurt, I'm not saying don't talk about it. It definitely needs to be talked about. It definitely needs to be, aired out, and the person needs to be vulnerable about it in order for it to feel actually resolved.
Right.
But there is also a part of it where you have to stop identifying with your pain as well too, in order for you to move forward.
Otherwise you're the victim.
What relationship has a partner that has never hurt the other partner?
Right.
None.
Yeah, none. Yeah.
So if you're constantly keeping score,
right,
that's just going to harm your relationship. That's another form of resentment, honestly.
Right. Exactly.
And no matter what it is, if you still want to be with that person, you have to let it go. You can't live there anymore. You can't, live in the past.
Right.
And because that resentment will come back. Because even if you've talked it all out, but you're constantly stewing on what happened that you talked out and you felt good about, now you feel bad again.
Right.
Because you're ruminating on it. And now you might start causing problems that actually you didn't even need to start.
Exactly.
So it's at some point you can cause your own resentment from how far you can go down the rabbit hole in your own mind.
Right.
And so again, you kind of have to subjectively look at it and be like, do I have this resentment because it's still happening and I haven't talked about it and whatever? Then you need to talk about it. You need to whatever you need to do. Like we talked about in this whole episode. But if you're feeling resentment and you've already talked about it and you did feel like it resolved, but now you're feeling resentment again and you feel like you need to rehash it out, you need to ask yourself, am I hurting my own feelings? Again, I mean, it all comes down to that, but am I hurting my own feelings?
Right.
Or did I really not get it out the first time? And maybe we do need to have another conversation.
And forgiveness. Am I actually...
The forgiveness,
forgiving.
Right.
Because if you never forgive, you can hash it out. You can tell them 50 times that it's not going to make any bit of a difference until you actually really let it go.
Right.
And remember, forgiveness is very hard. The real definition of forgiveness is very hard. It means to to erase it from memory. It means like forgive and forget. It means it never happened. It means it never counted as if it ever happened. That's what true forgiveness is like. It's like it never happened. That's what real forgiveness is. And so if you're not at that point, you need to get there.
Right.
And that also kind of dovetails into one other piece of this, which is that like, is the difference between grace and resentment, right? And it's like, if your partner does something that you feel hurt by, you might not react to that or even address it. And that can be burying it. I guess maybe it's like burying or grace. Mm-hmm. And so if you are like, oh, I'm going to let it go, I'm not going to make a big deal of it, it can come from one of two things. Mm-hmm. It could be either because you're being very graceful to your partner. Like, I'm really not going to make a big, who cares? It's not a big deal.
Yeah.
Or it could be, I'm not going to make a big deal of it because I'm going to push it under the rug. I'm going to I don't want to get into a fight, but it really doesn't. So it's either like you're fully letting it go, which is the immediate forgiveness.
But
that's what grace is.
Would actually be in this situation being like, oh, this bothered me, but I know he wouldn't do that. Right. And then giving grace then.
Right.
Like,
and letting go.
Knowing who the person is. Because I don't think someone's going to have something come up. Like, let's say it's the toilet seat, because we've been talking about that.
Right.
And her initially be like, he doesn't care about me, and just be like, oh, I forgive him. I think she'll be like, he doesn't care about me. But that's not true. He does this, this, and this for me. So you know what? He does care about me, and I know that. So I'm not going to say anything about the toilet seat because...
Exactly. That's great.
Because I know that he does these other things that proves to me that he cares about me. And so I'm probably viewing this in a different way than it actually is.
Grace is when you can truly let it go.
Right. If that would be truly letting it go, because you convinced yourself.
Because you don't have to talk about every single issue every time something bothers you.
Right.
Because some of them you can truly let go.
Mm-hmm.
But you can't kid yourself on it. If you can't truly let it go,
no matter
and you're burying it under the rug, right? Then you just need to talk about it, it's so that you can truly let it go, right? It's because the ultimate like thing we're trying to do is to truly let things go, because all that resentment is not truly letting things go, and so sometimes you can truly let things go because you just let it go. Like you don't need to talk about it. You just, oh, it's not that big of it. I'm processing this. Okay, this is a silly thing I came up with in my head. There's so much more evidence that she loves me and treats me well, and I'm actually going to let it go. I won't ever need to think about this again.
Yeah.
Or you're kidding yourself and you're pretending like, oh yeah, it's not that big of a deal. It's not, but it really is a big deal.
Right.
Know, so
well, and it's from someone who never used to let anything go. It's a lot more lighter of a life that you live when you learn to let things go. You feel a lot happier. When you don't let things go, you think, oh, if I let this go, then this person's going to do this to me again. Right. Or, then I don't feel validated for my feelings when this happened. But it honestly is better to let it go than to hold on to it and allow it to harm you for the rest of your life, honestly, because that's what it is essentially doing. Because now you have it there to bring up and hurt your own feelings all the time. When if you let it go because you're confident in the choice that you made, so let's say your partner hurt your feelings and you can't let it go, you're just hurting yourself and your relationship by holding on to that. But if you trust your partner and you want to still be with them, you got to let it go. And if it happens again and it's big enough of a deal, then it's a deal breaker and you deal with that then.
Right.
But if you chose to let it go and move forward, you're trusting that that's not going to happen. So it's like you have to like live in the now. I'm reading The Power of Now, but it is true.
Yeah.
And this is coming from someone who did all the opposite of the things I'm saying now, but that I do the things that I'm talking about now for the most part. I'm still human, but I did used to hold on to a bunch of stuff, and my life in general felt heavier because I had all this shit that I was like still had in my arsenal so that I could justify being upset about. You get this
room of pain that you're just like bouncing against the wall, the spiked walls.
No, so I could justify the way that I was behaving or I was acting, or like I'm angry because I have this, this, and this, and a lot of people live that way.
Right. But it just hurts you every day. You feel the hurt again and again.
You don't think that it's hurting you. You think that it's good because you can use it to validate your anger or whatever you have.
Right.
But I'm telling you that letting it go and living from a place of peace and happiness and like, yeah, you're going to get angry sometimes, but when you don't allow your emotions to dictate how you act towards people, it's so much more freeing. It's so much more peaceful. So I'm telling you, as someone who's been on both sides, let the shit go. Talk about the stupid stuff.
Yeah.
Because you feel so much better because you're not carrying anything. It's like carrying a bunch of like bricks in your backpack.
Exactly.
That's what you're doing when you don't let it go. And then when you let it go, you take the bricks out.
Right.
And it feels great.
Exactly.
So yeah, resentment, number one way to kill your relationship.
That's it. All right. Well, that was good.
That's literally it.
That's it. And I don't think, we don't have anything. I mean, we already talked about, but
yeah, that was like,
but it was
the thing. I
really,
can't think of anything else.
Yeah.
Right.
No, we've been through some fire and we came out unscathed. Like,
yeah.
Relationship.
But I mean, I guess we practice what we preach. So that's why we're here doing what we do.
Yeah. But it's a testament because like, every time we say this though, then we have, and we knock on wood, but it's always a bigger gap in between, right? It's like, I mean, again, I'm jinxing us, but I think we've gone months without having an argument, really. Like,
I mean, I knock on wood because we are human.
Yeah.
And,
and I'm sure something will come up at some point,
and I'm a little stitious.
The gaps become bigger and bigger over
because
time.
We're learning and we're applying it because we care about each other. That's what we're saying here.
And there's no resentment that's built up.
Right.
Because also resentment is also like kindling and it makes the fire a lot easier to, because
Ignite,
you just, exactly. And so when you don't have that, then it takes a little more, you got a lot more tolerance in there.
Exactly.
But you're on a short fuse when you got a pile of resentment under the rug.
Sometimes a very short fuse if you got a lot of resentment. Someone just breathes and you're like, why are you doing that? Yeah. It's like some people act that way because their fuse is so short. They have so much stuff.
But it's also why too, like, it's not a good way to be. It's not a good way to have a relationship. But there are some couples that yell at each other all the time and they stay together forever because it's not a good way to be.
They're both doing bad things, and so then they feel like they're on the same.
Well, they're also resolving all the thing. They're not burying anything under the rug. It's like immediately they're reacting to the other person and calling them a name or yelling at them back, and so it's like they're just letting it all out all the time.
Yeah, they're not harboring.
It's not a good way to do things, but it just shows like it's like how can couples fight all the time and be together, but then it's like the quiet couple that like falls apart and hates each other.
Yeah.
It's because they are secretly building the resentment. So you shouldn't be fighting all the time and screaming at each other.
Right.
But there's a way to
just talk about your stuff.
Exactly. All right. Well, that's it for this episode.
Check out our website.
Yeah.
betterthanperfectpod.com.
Exactly.
Follow us. Share our stuff. Leave us a review.
Send us an email
question.
Yeah. At betterthanperfect podcast@gmail.com.
Yes.
Or just go to betterthanperfectpod.com and
fill out the contact form.
Exactly. Fill out the contact form. All right. We'll see you next week.
Through every fault we find, no